Well, hello YouTube, it's me, Fortmaster, and welcome back to another Overly Sarcastic Productions reaction. The Castles of Wales. So yeah, I mean, Wales, the often forgotten part of the United Kingdom. I know that the Welsh language, apart from having one of the longest names or something in the world.
Just up the road from Llanfair to Pwllgwyn, go get a Quindrobwll, Llantysilio, go.
I think it's only beaten back by something from New Zealand or something.
We are in tau mata whakatangi hanga ko au o tamatea turipu kaka piki maunga horo nuku poka iwi he nua ki tana tahu.
It's also home of most of Britain's old coal mines, which also has some of the best quality coal in the world. A lot of, again, sticking with trains, a lot of narrow gauge lines there. The Welsh language also being the closest to the ancient Anglo-Saxon, or was it the Anglo-Saxon? No, the Anglo-Saxons are the ones who invaded from mainland Europe. The Welsh are like the closest thing we have today to having the original Britain language that was on the islands before all the subsequent invasions. Man, the island's been invaded so many times throughout ancient history. Yeah, but other than that, don't know much. So, I mean, castles are cool. I mean, who else wouldn't want to live in a castle? But yeah, so yeah. Original is linked in the description if you haven't seen it yet for some reason. Corner video shall be leading to my newest Let's Play. And with that out of the way, let's get this thing started then, shall we?
Of all the accomplishments and legacies of the medieval world, few things capture the popular imagination like castles.
Yeah.
These stone-built cities in miniature at once reflect the staggeringly long history of warfare, as well as the splendor of royalty and the remarkable brightness of these cultures. From kings and their knights to governing officials, visiting dignitaries, traveling merchants, and agricultural locals, medieval life at every level unfolded within their towering walls. And
the faces on those two. Oh god, you gotta love these old tapestries.
these great citadels stand as a built record of that history, and they're the kind of multi-purpose structures where functions overlap. A wide scenic view is a strategic asset for spotting incoming armies, so most castles are smack in the middle of the most beautiful vistas imaginable, and that aesthetic spiffiness in turn becomes a point of prestige for the castle's owner. Power, peril, and more than a little prettiness are all wrapped up in these castles, but perhaps the simplest reason why they captivate us is because we just don't make them anymore. Old cities are gorgeous, but we still have cities. Churches and temples are plenty impressive, but those are everywhere.
Yeah.
And even the grandest civic buildings have an air of normalness to them because people go to the place for their jobs. But castles are a relic of a time we do not live in, and that otherworldliness makes them fascinating. The reasons they were built, the shapes they took, the decorations they had, the ways they fell into ruin, all these factors are so distant to us that we see castles more as strongholds of fantasy than a living system where society and warfare converged. And I likewise struggled to wrap my head around these things until I came to Wales and saw a few for myself. Welsh castles are so numerous compared to the modest size of the place that Wales is the most castle-dense country on Earth. Given England is right next door, we can guess they weren't built for fun.
Yeah. I've been in a couple of castles before. I mean, no, Castellomo wouldn't. That was built by a Victorian guy who wanted to be, I don't know. But no, so again, I've told this story before, but when I was 4 initially, came back when I was 5, we left to adopt my little brother from Lithuania. And I won't go into the details, but needless to say, it's a process that was supposed to take 10 weeks, turned into 10 months. So yeah, it did not go that as well as planned. So while we were there, of course, in between, trying to get my little brother, we ended up, doing touristy things. And some of those things were going to see castles. So in Lithuania, we went to two, at least two that I remember. There's Gediminas Pilis, which is a castle in Vilnius, the capital of Lithuania. And yeah, I mean, you look at it now and it's realistically, it's not that impressive. It's like this little hexagonal tower. It's like, what, 3 or 4 stories tall? Wait, actually, why am I doing this from memory? I have the internet right in front of me. Yeah, so, I mean, when you look at it today, that's pretty much, that's pretty much most of it. I mean, if you go, I mean, granted, there are like more buildings, but I mean, like, it's like a little tower that like goes up that tall, and granted, in it itself is not that, you know, spectacular looking, but the fact it's on this hill that has an absolutely beautiful view of the city, and again, that's not what it looked like in its entirety. Originally, it looked like something like this, like the remaining towers, like I think it's one of these two up here, but yeah, you can see how much there was. Granted, centuries of foreign occupation, some of which were, you know, communist, will do that to you. But yeah, so we went to there, and I swear, even when I was like 4 or 5, going up the stairs to get to the top, I remember that feeling cramped. And that was only one of the castles that we went to. The other one, as I said before, Turkai, is a castle that's in the middle of a lake. There it is, right there. Yeah, and as I said before, I caught pneumonia while I was there, so...
Now, most of these castles have survived, albeit in different states of functionality or completeness, so
Yeah.
to better understand how they worked and what they meant for the story of Wales, let's do some history.
Woo,
The
he
tale of
said the
castles
line!
in Britain goes back to Roman times, and there
Celts,
was
that was the
need of them
original.
to deal with those rowdy Celts. At a minimum, most every town with Chester or Car gets its name from the Latin castrum and was originally built as a Roman military fort. Roman Britain was a forts first, towns later kind of place.
Okay.
While the Englandy bits were full of spiffy cities by the height of the empire, Roman presence in Wales was 1, maybe 2 towns and forts for days. Much like Hadrian's
Okay.
Wall for Scotland, this amount of historical troublemaking is a dear source of Welsh pride. 1 millennium later, some of these spots got repurposed after the Norman conquest for a new age of castle building. See, in 1066, William the Conqueror won the entire kingdom after a single battle, but he needed some new strategies in order to hold on to it. What followed
Yeah.
was the heftiest single wave of castle building in British history. With a whole kingdom to pacify and not much time to do it, William and his nobles started by locking down key cities and protecting lines of supply and communication across rivers or old Roman roads.
Yeah,
By
old
the end of the
wooden
century,
castle.
they built several hundred castles across England and South Wales. A small handful of these were made of stone, but the rest were built from wood as a motte and bailey, an earthwork hill with a central keep on top and a fortified garrison below, with stables, storehouses, and anything else the castle owner would like to have behind a wall. These first castles may not conjure all the dramatic medieval vibes, but they were quick to build and plenty effective at stopping mass uprisings against the new Norman government. Even an architecture gremlin like myself can't fault their definitely correct priorities. English
Yeah.
castles transitioned to
I mean, even if it's not made of stone, having something between you and the enemy to keep them from stabbing you is generally a good thing.
stone over the next century, with new and newly refurbished castles opting for a more permanent material than wood. In Wales, however, Norman rule was substantially less established, so the ease and versatility of timber castles kept them in use well into the 1200s. But even from the Normans' first
Okay.
arrival, the key difference from England is Wales did not come pre-conquered, so castles were built offensively rather than defensively.
Oh,
And
okay.
in practice, that meant they were built faster, more often, much closer together, and against an organized enemy who was also building castles. Both the Norman lords in the southern borderlands, called
I can see why there are so many castles in Wales then. I swear it's like one really giant messed up game of chess.
marches, as well as the Welsh princes themselves, were castling seemingly every river and valley in Wales.
Castling,
These
again,
offensive
chess metaphor.
castles often skipped the motte completely and just built a fortified earthwork bailey, what we sometimes call a ringwork castle. And as the frontier shifted over the 10 to 1200s, old castles were abandoned while new ones were built to suit the current strategic needs. And
Jeez.
that is exhausting to catalog at scale. So let's zoom into Caerphilly Castle, one of the most consequential and best preserved castles in the country. Originally the site of a Roman fort, Caerphilly began construction all the way in 1268. Cardiff Castle, by contrast, was built just 7 miles south along the coast 2 centuries earlier.
Oh,
Conquering
okay,
Wales,
that all?
clearly a fraught process. Timetables notwithstanding, this castle was built by the noble de Clare family, who added the Welsh county of Glamorgan to their already impressive portfolio
Glamorgan.
of states in 1217. In the 1260s, the young Gilbert de Clare helped win a civil war between the king and his barons, and then turned his focus north to the alarming threat of the Welsh prince Llewellyn ap Gruffydd. To
I swear, I mean, when it comes to other languages, I mean, English is no picnic. There is like, for every rule, there is like 3 exceptions. but at the same time, you have like languages like French, where you look at a word and half the consonants are silent, and then you have Welsh, which just looks like you shook up a Scrabble bag and just poured it on the floor.
To protect his inland holdings and defend Cardiff itself,
Oh, that tower does not look stable at all.
if things got really bad, Gilbert de Clare began work on Caerphilly Castle in 1268. It was built entirely of stone, but seeing as that takes more time, it was still vulnerable enough for Prince Llewellyn to attack and possibly even destroy the castle in 1270. Construction resumed the next year in the new concentric style with nestled layers of fortifications, in this case 2 rivers and 3 outer walls. Thanks to a brief peace, the castle was finished in the mid-1270s, just in time for the new English King Edward to launch a final campaign to conquer Wales. And with the prince defeated in 1282, Wales was no longer a constant war zone, so Gilbert swiftly reassessed the purpose of his castle, converting it into a fine country estate in the following decades. The fortifications on Caerphilly remain gorgeous in their scope and complexity, and de Clare recognized the prestige to be had from a swanky castle, as even though the Welsh threat had passed, he continued renovating and expanding the defenses for seemingly aesthetic purposes alone. There's no strategic reason to make the outermost walls symmetrical, except matchy shapes make happy brain go burr. But
I mean, you gotta love it. I mean, stuff like that.
his death, Caerphilly had turned from a wartime fortress into a palace fit for a minor royal. The castle's story continues through decades of aristocratic escapades, but in the 1640s, Caerphilly's peaceful quiet turns to ruin during the Wars of the Three Kingdoms, when hundreds of castles across the Isles were battered by a new and very unsporting tactic called torrential cannon fire. And many of the castles that survived were deliberately wrecked after the war to render them useless. Such was the case with Caerphilly, hence the dramatic lean on the southeast tower, and so it remained until the 1920s and 30s when the Marquess of Bute launched.
I still can't believe that tower. It's like the Leaning Tower of Pisa. It's just sitting there at like a 20-degree angle or something, partially destroyed, and it's just still standing.
A contentiously thorough reconstruction project, one of several in Wales around this time. Spectators in the historical community, as well as the British government, had and still have deep misgivings about the scope of the transformation and the irreversible damage to the original ruins. But man, is it something else to be able to walk over a drawbridge, through a gatehouse, out to the courtyard, into the Great Hall, and up along the walls and towers. It's the rare chance to engage with a complete medieval castle. It conflicts me, yet it compels me. The history of castles in Wales continues up north, where King Edward cemented his victory by stuffing the place with more castles, just like the first Normans had done after their conquest.
That's my boy.
And the royal castles of the north are the grandest and most impressive in Wales on account of all that crown money. Here too, they shifted to luxurious residences over time as royal power solidified and warfare in Britain became the exception rather than the rule. Wales got its last new castle at Raglan in the mid-1400s, and aside from a handful renovated by the Tudor monarchs, Welsh castles retreated to the background, a legacy of conquests and an older, distant era. By the time Caerphilly was ruined, nobody knew who built it or when, with explanations ranging from ancient Roman forts to a legendary pre-Christian king of Britain. Wildly off base, but when an air of fantastical mystery winds through every hall and tower, it's hard to fight that reflex. Wales is not defined by its castles, but they are the most potent physical relic of a winding, lively history. And the simple act of walking into one rockets you back to a time when that story was being written. River by river, valley by valley, castle by castle. Thank you for watching. I visited Caerphilly with my...
I mean, I know the average thing would be that everybody kind of, it's natural human, like, thought to think, like, you know, you're the center of the universe, nothing before you mattered, nothing after you will. But when you see stuff like that, it helps you realize just how much time there was before your own existence. There were so many people doing so many things before the second before you were conceived, and stuff like that just helps you put like a giant magnifying glass over it. It's just, oh, so much history. Oh God, if I ever get a chance to go back to Lithuania, I definitely want to go back and see those castles. Maybe like see if there are any others. Oh, beautiful. Original is linked in the description if you haven't seen it for some reason. Corner video shall be linking to my newest Let's Play. And with that out of the way, I hope you guys liked. If you did, leave a like, subscribe if you have not, and I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.